We started this journey with the idea that history occasionally breaks its own rules. We've seen the impossible become real, from armies that fight themselves to ships made of frozen sawdust. But perhaps the greatest glitch in the Matrix isn't an event, but a person. A person whose very existence seems to defy the laws of probability. Welcome to the final chapter of our series. Today, we are telling the story of Violet Jessop, the woman who faced three of the most famous maritime disasters in history and lived to tell about every single one. Violet Jessop was born in Argentina in 1887. She had a difficult childhood, surviving a near-fatal bout of tuberculosis as a child, which her doctor said she wouldn't live through. But even as a girl, Violet showed an extraordinary stubbornness toward fate. In 1908, after her family relocated to England, she took a job as a stewardess on the massive ocean liners of the White Star Line. Her job was to serve the wealthy passengers, maintain their cabins, and generally endure the arduous hours of life at sea. She was good at her job, but perhaps unlucky in her choice of employer. The White Star Line was famous for building the largest, most luxurious, and most ambitious ships ever conceived. The first incident occurred in 1911. Violet was working as a stewardess on the RMS Olympic, which was, at the time, the largest ship in the world. On September 20th, the Olympic was sailing near the Isle of Wight when it was involved in a serious collision with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. The warship, which was designed to ram enemy ships, struck the side of the Olympic. The collision was severe. It tore huge holes in the side of the Olympic and caused flooding in two of its watertight compartments. The ship was listing badly. Panic broke out among some of the passengers. But Violet, though shaken, remained calm. The Olympic managed to limp back to port without sinking, and Violet, ever the professional, stayed to tend to the passengers. She walked away from the collision unharmed. She continued working for the White Star Line. Her friends and family begged her to find a job on land, but she loved the sea, and so she transferred to the newest, most luxurious ship in the White Star fleet. The second incident occurred on the night of April 14th, 1912. Violet was working as a stewardess on the RMS Titanic during its maiden and final voyage, but was pressured to join the crew by her friends, who told her it would be a magnificent experience. On that freezing cold night, Violet was ordered to Lifeboat 16. As she was preparing to board the lifeboat, one of the ship's officers handed her a bundle and said, "Look after this baby, miss." Violet got into Lifeboat 16 and watched as the great ship tilted up, broke apart, and plunged into the Atlantic. She survived the night in the icy lifeboat. When she was finally rescued and taken aboard the RMS Carpathia, a frantic woman rushed up to her, grabbed the baby from Violet's arms, and ran off without saying a word. Violet would later describe in her memoirs the bizarre feeling of having carried a child through the most famous maritime disaster in history, only to have the mother silently reclaim it. Violet Jessop had now survived the sinking of the world's largest ship. Any rational person would have retired to a cottage, never looking at water again. But not Violet. When World War I broke out, she joined the British Red Cross as a nurse. And where do you think she chose to work? On a ship, of course. She signed on to the HMHS Britannic, the Titanic's enormous sister ship, which had been converted into a hospital vessel. On the morning of November 21st, the Britannic hit a mine, almost certainly placed by a German U-boat. The ship began to sink rapidly. Violet's calm professionalism saved her life again. She was eating breakfast when the explosion occurred. She rushed to her station, helped the patients into lifeboats, and only then, as the ship was clearly doomed, did she save herself. She jumped from the deck, fully aware of the danger. As the massive ship was sinking, the propellers were still turning, churning the water. She was pulled down by the suction of the giant hull and was struck hard on the head. She later said she hit something hard, the keel, or perhaps the propeller itself. She managed to resurface and was pulled into a passing lifeboat, alive but badly injured. She later suffered terrible headaches, which doctors attributed to a fractured skull sustained from the underwater blow. Violet Jessop survived the collision of the Olympic, the sinking of the Titanic, and the sinking of the Britannic. She went on to work for another 35 years at sea, finally retiring in 1950. She lived until 1971, dying at the age of 83. It is a story that defies probability bad luck, and even the cold depths of the ocean. The message is simple. History is not a straight line. It is not a fixed, predictable path. Sometimes the only thing you can do is hold on tight and hope that, like Violet Jessup, you are lucky enough to survive the next great glitch in the Matrix.